Welcome back to Wowza Studio Sessions at NAB Show 2018. I'm Rob Baynard at LiveUGC, and I'm sitting here with the very talented veteran Tim Siglin, who I've been following for many, many years and reading a lot of his content on streaming media and elsewhere. And he's also with a nonprofit called Help Me Stream. And we're going to talk about user-generated content, specifically LiveUGC content.
Awesome.
There is a new survey that Tim has been working very hard on to get more data on how people are using and generating LiveUGC content, and we're pretty excited to have a little chat now about what he's been working on with this survey and the forthcoming white paper with Wowza. So tell me, for those who don't know exactly what the definition is of user-generated content, let's start there.
Sure. Well, and as a matter of fact, user-generated content's been around. I've been in streaming now for 20 years. It's been around since about the second year in. And think about YouTube. In fact, one of the whole premises around YouTube, I don't know if you remember this, but originally it was a dating site. You were going to put up YouTubes, meaning videos about yourself. Well, it turned out the dating thing really didn't fly, but people wanted to put up content that they found interesting. So the first one, of course, was one of the co-founders, his day at the zoo, which was like a 43-second clip. From that, people, of course, decided, oh, I want to put up things about my cat, or I want to put up things about the sewing that I'm doing, or the macrame, or the crazy stunts, you know, the Jackass era. So
Right.
We've had a number of different eras of user-generated content. What's changed recently is the ability to do a lot of that live. So, you know, we started with Periscope and Meerkat, but now we've got the integration like you all are doing here with Facebook and obviously with YouTube still with the live there.
Yeah.
The whole idea is just you as a average viewer / consumer want to put up content that's of interest to you, and hopefully other people will like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all that different from what we're doing here today.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it has so many different applications, and the idea behind it, meaning, you know, these are users, actual practitioners of the process, and they're putting up content about things that they're really passionate about, and it can be very engaging for the audience to, you know, be able to relate to being in that scenario and being in that situation, or something as light as spending the day with the family, or,
Right.
you know, and then also there obviously has been an explosion in UGC, LiveUGC for gaming, esports, and we've seen a lot of that. Are you getting a lot of feedback from your survey about, you know, the esports space?
You know, it's interesting you say that. Of course, Twitch was the big player in the space. Those of us who knew that before it was Twitch, it
Sure.
was Justin
TV.
TV. And Justin was all about live casting. And the whole idea there was, and it's really funny to think about because he wore a body cam, sort of like what the police wear, around his neck. It was a live casting camera, and he would go and do things. And it seemed like it was great for about 2 weeks. And then what he settled into was playing video games and making comments about the video games he played. And of course, that was where sort of the esports commentation with Twitch, et cetera, was born. What we actually have asked a question on is to filter people. Is do you do esports or live streaming? Are you involved in gaming? That's an important question that we want to answer, because if we find that there's a consistently higher adoption rate for people who do that, we then know that we can sort of start classifying people into gamers and non-gamers, participators versus just viewers.
Right,
Now, I
right.
personally, you know, my son does a lot of gaming. I grew up in the arcade era where people would look over your shoulder, and then I remember they would put like big screens if you're playing Donkey Kong so other people
Sure.
could see you.
Yeah.
But for me, the idea of sitting and watching somebody play World of Warcraft for an hour just isn't my thing.
It's not for everybody, that's for sure. That's for sure. So you've been conducting this large survey
Right.
in partnership with Wowza, and talk to me about the origination of that. What spawned the need to gather more data
Sure.
from user feedback from?
So I've been writing a couple blog posts for Wowza, and I've found that those have been really, they've given me a lot of freedom to say the things that I want to say. Just like streaming media does. I mean, there's no constraint there.
Sure.
But one of the things that I got to talking to several people in-house at Wowza about was how do we handle user-generated content, and how do we handle specifically things like live? Of course, Wowza is really pushing the idea of the Clearcaster with Facebook Live, and it's a very sort of targeted product. So as we went through to look at moving beyond some blog posts to a white paper, one of the questions came up, do we really know the data for people out there and how they're using it? So what we decided to do is ask two sets of questions. The first set of questions says, how do you, Rob, in your personal life, use user-generated content? Do you watch Twitch? Do you use Facebook, Insta, Snap, etc.? And then we ask a second set of questions. Okay, let's assume you're in the industry. How does your company use those? And what we want to understand is the difference between you as a personal user versus your company. Because sometimes what we find with technology is we'll go off and sell the technology like 3D TV, but there isn't necessarily a market for it. UGC, we felt there was a market for, but we're looking to validate whether that's an accurate assessment from our standpoint.
Yeah, and it's expanded beyond that because you're gathering a lot of data also on what platforms people are using and what environments that work better for user-generated content.
And even things like vertical video versus horizontal video as people shoot and consume.
Yeah, and Square, of course. I mean, it's really big with social.
Square is hard for, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, look, video people hate it, but agencies love it.
Right.
So,
well, and I have to say, just to step back to on-demand UGC too, I remember having this conversation almost 20 years ago with one of my mentors, a lady by the name of Christine Perret, where she was beginning to say the creator is the consumer, meaning the person who would, my argument to her was, as a video professional, not everybody's going to learn how to use Adobe Premiere. Well, it turns out what happened in the early days of YouTube was people would retake and retake and retake until they got that one take perfect.
Yeah.
And it's really funny to think about now, but what ultimately ended up happening was better consumer video editing tools came out so that you could do basic cuts. But really, the savvy user-generated content creator is still able to do it in a single take, and that's where live makes it even better, because you're going up against a live studio audience, so to speak, trying to do it perfectly like you were a stand-up comedian or something like that.
I think you're right. I think it's very important, that topic that you just touched on about the different solutions that have come out for consumers, right? Those without a technical background.
Right.
And, you know, we've had VidPresso on this show yesterday, Monday actually, and they were demoing the integration with the Clearcaster graphics insertion into the Clearcaster and then streamed out to Facebook. Things like that, you know, tools like VidPresso that are very easy for non-technical production people to use are really valuable, especially when you're dealing with some LiveUGC that has a larger marketing department, but not necessarily a production team. We see that a lot with our clients, and they're trying to figure out how they can do it easier, because, you know, some of these brands are users themselves, and they're trying to get their message out there. But so all of this data that you've been gathering for the survey, you're compiling and you're working on a report.
Correct. Yeah, and the report will actually be around the whole idea of LiveUGC from a Wowza perspective. We'll plug in the data to it. So it's not going to be a full-blown report like I do, say, for Unisphere research or streaming media. This is more about getting those key salient data points. While we're asking that, we are gathering other information, absolutely, and those things may show up in future future reports. I think one thing you brought up that's interesting is when we say user-generated content, it's somewhat of a euphemism these days if you have a high production value like this. Clearly, there are brands that are using UGC to drive branding, just like they use Insta to drive influencing and that kind of thing.
Sure.
I think we have to really sort of get to the point where we call that something different from user-generated content.
Sure,
because everybody's a user, everybody's a consumer. Is it the single person with a go-coder holding this up and doing a live stream, or is it something like the Clearcaster where we're bringing in a whole number of cameras and doing a video mix through an edit roll or something along those lines?
Yeah, well, I mean, the sheer production value that you see from vloggers and these people at home who are doing unboxing videos and other
Right,
things. I mean,
right.
The production value is so high in some of these cases.
And that's good. That means that we're all moving the quality bar forward, which is absolutely awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have
do
bloggers like Justine or Marcus Brownlee.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And they're using Red cameras to do like
and even
their vlog.
the iFixit guys who I know and love.
Yep.
They're doing a huge service for all of us, and it's helping them to sell product, because if you look at what they use for tools, if I want to do it just as easily as they're doing it to replace my iPhone screen, I got to buy these 6 iFixit tools.
Yeah.
But that is clearly much closer to me to user-generated content than it is sort of brand-driven content.
Yeah. So is the survey still open?
It is. Tomorrow is the last day, and if you complete the survey and leave your email address, that's the only piece of identifying information you need to leave, we're going to do a giveaway for 3 $50 Amazon gift cards.
Nice, that's great. Yeah, so it's a 16-question survey. It doesn't take very long.
Really simple. You took it.
I took it. Aubrey took it as well.
Awesome.
It's actually kind of fun to go through, and it's laid out really well. So all I did was Google Wowza LiveUGC survey and found it that way.
And the term LiveUGC is all one word, LiveUGC, which apparently now is going to become a Wowza branded thing. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I really appreciate you telling me a little bit about the survey and LiveUGC, and we'll be right back at the top of the next hour with more Wowza Studio Sessions live from NAB Show 2018.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it is funny to me what we used to call UGC.